The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes?
Greetings. I'm Admiral Swart, Commanding Officer of the USS Dauntless, and this is the briefing with the Admiral, the stardate -251997.1. I am the Admiral in question, and today we're going to be talking about loyalty. But before we get to that, let's do the regular housekeeping, which is to say that we record these sessions every Tuesday, more or less, at 12:30 South African Standard Time. And there is a live chat while we're recording. We stream live to our Discord server, the USS Dauntless Discord server, in the screening room channel. If you are an active duty member of the crew, you are welcome to join us for these recording sessions live in the chat, and you're welcome to participate there. If you're not an active duty member of the crew, you're welcome to join us on YouTube. We do try to stream there live at the same time. It seems to be working today, as it usually does. And you're welcome to drop comments or questions there too. Hopefully I'll be able to see those. Comments or questions that you'd actually like me to address when we get to the Q&A section towards the end of the presentation, please make sure that you @tag me. So just mention my name in the chat in Discord or in YouTube, so that when I'm scrolling up through the chat, when we get to that section, I can see if anything has been directed to me, so that I know to respond to it, as opposed to just being part of the naturally flowing conversation, which tends to happen during these things, which is perfectly acceptable. And who am I? What am I doing here? Why are we here? What's this all about? As I mentioned, I am the commanding officer of the USS Dauntless. The Dauntless is a future-focused advocacy and action group that is at its core a Star Trek fan club. We are a chapter of Starfleet, the International Star Trek Fan Association Incorporated, which is the world's largest organized fan-run Star Trek organization. That is Starfleet, has thousands of members in hundreds of chapters in dozens of countries around the world, and the USS Dauntless is the chapter based in Cape Town, South Africa. But because we are living in the 21st century, a lot of our activities take place online, which means we are not literally constrained to only having members in Cape Town. We're able to enjoy having members from all over the place. So even though the Dauntless is the Cape Town chapter, most of our stuff happens online, and so we welcome crew members from all kinds of places. All right, with that out of the way, let us move on with today's briefing, which is talking about loyalty. Now, loyalty is it's not something that we talk about very often here in the Dauntless, not because it's not important or not part of our sort of ethical construct, but more because we just don't think about it in those terms. It's kind of folded into a lot of the other concepts that we do talk about a lot, and we just kind of don't articulate it or um, visualize it as a distinct concept. But I think it's worth spending a little bit of time today, sort of pulling it out of its shell, turning it over, and seeing how it fits into the broader schema that is our values framework, our ethical values, our ideological construct that binds the Dauntless together. But let's start with something of a definition. What does loyalty mean? It's kind of a murky concept. So let's make sure that we know what we're talking about here. So loyalty is the quality of being faithful and steadfast in your support of a person, group, cause, or set of principles. It involves persistent commitment that remains firm even when it's difficult, inconvenient, or costly to do so. So that's a pretty complex philosophical concept. So let's break it down a little bit. There are some kind of core elements of what loyalty is made up of. First one is faithfulness, which is the strict and continuing adherence to an obligation, trust, or duty. There's steadfastness, which is remaining firm in the face of temptation to desert or betray. There's identification, which is not flashing your badge. Identification in this context means the feeling that your interests, your personal interests, are tied to the interests of the person or group that you're loyal to. And then the fourth component is consistency. So being a person someone can always count on through highs and through lows. And that's a pretty core Dauntless value there. We've spoken about that a lot. There are also different types of loyalty, some of which apply more to our circumstances here than others. And the 4 or 5 main ones are, first one is personal, which is deep devotion to your friends, your family, your partner, and that is built on emotional bonds and kind of mutual trust. That's something that's quite relevant to us here in the Dauntless. Second kind is political or civic loyalty, and that's allegiance to a nation, a government, or a ruler, which is sometimes expressed through service or things like pledges of allegiance. That's not really what we're dealing with here. Although there are some similar ideas that we do manifest, that's not really the kind of loyalty we're talking about. The next kind is professional loyalty. So that's commitment to an employer, a client, or a professional code of ethics. That's pretty close to what we embody here. Although we don't have clients, we're not an employer, we do have a professional code of ethics that we try to live by. So that's relevant. The next is commercial or brand loyalty. And this is a consumer's preference for and repeated purchase of a particular brand. This actually does relate to our life here in Starfleet, because we, if nothing else, are the physical manifestation of brand loyalty to the brand of Star Trek. Now, we tend not to think of Star Trek as a brand. We tend to think of it as a vision of the future, something that can be emulated, something that we see as aspirational or inspirational. But in at least one very important sense, it definitely is a commercial brand. It's an intellectual property that's owned by a corporation. They make money by selling us things. So it definitely is a brand. And we'd be kidding ourselves to pretend that that's not an important part of what we embody here. And then the other kind of loyalty is ideological loyalty, and that's devotion to specific principles, religions, or causes. And that's very much where we live here. Perhaps not religions, but principles and causes. That's the kind of stuff that is our bread and butter. There are also some moral considerations about loyalty, and this is where loyalty can become something of a double-edged sword. We talk about loyalty as if it's a universal good, but actually there can be some pretty negative outcomes if it's misapplied or employed inappropriately. And this is where the moral considerations come in. So while it's viewed as a virtue, loyalty is quite complicated. And philosophers, this is the kind of thing that philosophers will talk about a lot, they distinguish between blind loyalty, which is sort of the unthinking support for an entity even when it's wrong, and loyal opposition, which is another almost the opposite of that, which involves supporting a group or an idea or a brand or whatever it might be, while constructively criticizing its faults. Misplaced loyalty to an unworthy or abusive cause can be seen as a vice rather than a virtue. So if you place your loyalty in someone or something that is not enviable, then that's not great. You can be loyal to something without agreeing with everything that that thing or person says, does, or is. And that's an important concept, which I think we'll be touching on a little bit as we proceed today. So to summarize what we've come up with so far, loyalty is steadfast commitment, remaining reliable and supportive even when it's difficult, inconvenient, or costly. We can sharpen that a little bit further. Loyalty isn't defined by how strongly you feel it. It's defined by what you direct it towards. And the key risk factor that we mustn't forget here is that you can be completely loyal and still be loyal to the wrong thing. We're not going to be dwelling a lot on that concept of it today, because we think that being loyal to Starfleet and to Star Trek is pretty cool, and we're not really going to talk very much about being loyal to other things, but it'll come up from time to time. So let's go again through the different targets of loyalty that you're likely to encounter, that we deal with, especially here in the Dauntless. So you've got loyalty to individuals, so that is to friends, colleagues, family members, etc. Then there's loyalty to the team. So now we're no longer dealing with individual people, we're dealing with a collective of people, your team, the group that you belong to. And whether that's your away team, your department, the Dauntless, Region 8, Starfleet International, the Star Trek fan community as a whole. That's the kind of groups we're talking about. They don't have to be small groups, they can be large groups. Then there's loyalty to excellence, which is loyalty to a concept, right? But one concept in particular that we are interested in is excellence. So that's about bringing your best, helping others to do the same. And then there's loyalty to the mission, which is the objective, right? Now, we use the term mission here in the Dauntless context to mean two distinct but overlapping things. The first one is the broad mission, which is to bring about the future as envisioned in Star Trek, doing whatever we can day by day, piece by piece, whatever is within our control to help move our world towards that optimistic future as envisioned and depicted in the Star Trek film and television franchise, right? That is the mission, the big mission. But that is also broken down into smaller, discrete missions, which is the kind of activities that we engage in day to day. A discrete mission is when we go out and we do a thing and then we come back again. Or sometimes we just sit at our desk and we do a thing and then we're done, right? But both of those require a measure of loyalty, a measure of commitment. So we've got small, short-term objectives or big, long-term, epic scale objectives. And loyalty to both of those is relevant. Now, with those four sort of targets of loyalty, remember individuals, groups, excellence, and the mission, those don't automatically align. Being loyal to one doesn't necessarily mean that you can or must be loyal to the others. They can even be a conflict, but they can be aligned, right? If we're purposeful about it, if we are mindful about how we instantiate that loyalty, we can make sure that those things are aligned, that they're all pointing in the same direction. So let's look at a failure mode of loyalty, when loyalty is misapplied. And this is the part we tend not to think about very, very often. So loyalty becomes a problem, as I mentioned earlier, when it's directed at the wrong thing in the moment, right? Because the different targets of loyalty are all valid in and of themselves, but in any given moment, it might be optimal to devote your loyalty to this target as opposed to that target, to the individual versus the group, to excellence versus the collective. And this is exemplified in the old Starfleet canards. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. So this is a moment when you're implementing that value where loyalty to the individual must be set aside because of loyalty to the collective, to the group. So that's a failure mode, right? When you choose the wrong target for your loyalty in the moment. And when that happens, the different forms of loyalty can pull you in different directions, and your conscience might not have the obvious solution to what needs to occur. So here's some examples of that. So let's say somebody underperforms in their duties, right? A colleague of yours in your department or your away team, they're not showing up in the same way that everybody else is. Your loyalty to the individual would say to you, don't make it uncomfortable, right? Let's not make this person feel bad about their lack of participation. But your loyalty to the mission says, we need to execute this mission properly and we need everybody to show up, right? So now you've got two different loyalties that are conflicting with each other. Another example is when your team is relaxed and informal. The loyalty to the group says, let's keep things easygoing because this informal, casual vibe feels nice. But your loyalty to excellence, the value of excellence, says we can do better than this, right? We can pull our socks up, we can do a better job if we're just a little bit less easygoing. Another example is, let's say a decision has been made, but it's not working out, right? We're not achieving the results that we anticipated achieving once that command was issued. So loyalty to the team says, let's just go along with it, right? This is the plan, let's just execute the plan. But loyalty to the mission says we need to adjust and improve. We need to fix the problem because it's obviously not working out the way we anticipated. Now, none of these are bad instincts, right? It makes perfect sense to be loyal to the individual that's underperforming, to be loyal to the group that feels nice because of the way things are playing out, or feeling loyal to the team that is executing the plan um, and it feels uncomfortable to rock the boat. None of those are bad in and of themselves. They're just incomplete on their own, right? If you take a step back and look at the slightly broader picture, you can see that actually the loyalty in that moment might be misplaced. We should be executing this avenue and not that one. Misplaced loyalty doesn't feel like failure. It feels like doing the right thing, but it's for the wrong reason. And that's why it's dangerous. When I say dangerous in this context, I don't want to be overstating things, but in terms of success of the mission, it is potentially perilous. Protecting somebody can feel like support, like you're watching out for them. Keeping things smooth can feel like teamwork, like we're working together. And avoiding friction can feel like professionalism, like we're ensuring that the team is functioning as a well-oiled machine. But if any of those things weaken execution of the mission, then it's actually working against our values. It's working against us. So what we need to do is to keep things balanced, right? Find a balance between those different targets of loyalty. So we're not saying don't be loyal to people. We're not saying don't value the team. We're saying loyalty needs direction. And without that direction, even good intentions can lead to poor outcomes. So how do we resolve that conflict? How do we look at our different loyalties that might be in conflict from time to time and course correct? How do we solve it? Once you recognize that your loyalties can pull you in different directions, the next step is knowing how to respond. That recognition, by the way, is a non-trivial problem, right? Just being able to see that you've got different loyalties that are pulling you in different directions, and that those loyalties are not wrong, but that there is an inherent conflict, being able to recognize and acknowledge that to yourself, like if you're able to do that, you deserve a pat on the back to begin with. A lot of people will tend to rationalize and justify, and that's not a productive way of doing things. You need to be able to recognize that conflict in yourself so that you can take the next step, which is to know or to try and figure out how to respond. Unfortunately, there's no easy rule to how you resolve that conflict, but there is a kind of a process that you can go through, and it's a step-by-step process, right? So let's go through that process now. The first step is to identify what each option serves. So when you're faced with this dilemma, supporting the underperforming crew member feels like you're being loyal to the person, but you're not being loyal to the mission, right? So we need to identify what each choice serves. In any moment of tension, you ask, is this serving the individual? Is it serving the team dynamic? Is it serving the overall mission? Is it serving the expectation of bringing our best, being our most professional, best selves? We're not judging yet at this point in the process. We're just trying to identify, if I make this choice, who does that serve? And if I make this choice, who does that serve? And this is where a lot of mistakes creep in, because people don't realize what they're being loyal to in the moment. They're going off vibes, and it feels like that might be the right choice versus that choice. But understanding the motivation, your own motivation, why this is better than that. Okay, we're not even in the beta space yet. Who does this help? Who does this help? That's the important aspect at this point in the process. Being able to identify that is the first step. The next step in the process is now we're trying to project the outcome. If I make this choice, where does that go? What happens to the team over time? Does this improve our performance, or does it slowly degrade it? So let's apply that to some of our earlier examples. So if we're ignoring underperformance, it might give us a smooth moment now, but it's going to weaken the team over time, because that underperforming crew member is going to keep underperforming, and then it's going to bring down the performance level of the whole team over time. Or keeping things casual, we're in a more formal vibe, is what's required, it might be comfortable in the moment, but it's going to potentially lead to inconsistent execution later because people are too chilled to get up and do the work. Or not adjusting what is apparently a bad decision. It feels like unity now because we're working together, but ultimately it's going to lead to failure, right? Because it's a bad decision. So loyalty isn't about intention, it's about trajectory, where you see this sequence of events playing out over time. And that takes us to step 3. This is where we have to decide which is the right choice of action. We have to choose the action that aligns forward. And we need to be making this choice not based on what the easiest option is or what avoids discomfort. It's tempting to do both of those because we are entropic systems and we want to try and minimize our level of energy expenditure, but that is not necessarily the optimal outcome. By now, we've identified what is the right choice, and we need to decide what action moves all 4 forms of loyalty closer together. All 4 forms of loyalty, so that's to the individual, to the team, to excellence, and to the mission. We can choose which one brings those 4 back into alignment again, which is not necessarily, and often is not, the easiest or most comfortable outcome. So what does this look like? It looks like acting in support of the mission in a way that helps the team while developing the individual and raising the level of execution. It's not perfect, and that's not going to be a perfect outcome of every situation, but if we can align those directionally, then that feels like the correct decision. And then step 4 is execution. So making that happen. But we need to be sensitive about that, the way we do that. We have to do it without making it personal. And this is another area where a lot of people make mistakes. You either avoid action entirely, again, taking the easy way out, or it's tempting to make it personal or confrontational, saying, you stuffed up, you're responsible for this, you need to take the fall. You're an idiot, whatever. And that's typically not all that constructive either, right? The middle path here between those 2 extremes is staying focused on the mission, keeping the goal in mind, keeping things calm and matter of fact. So we try not to let emotion or emotional language cloud our intervention, and we frame everything around improving execution. So it's not you're a bad person, you're bad at this job, you made a mistake. It's you might be able to do better if you try it this way. You might be a better officer if you adjust your approach in this way. We as a team might be able to meet our targets more effectively if you pitch in this way instead of that way. So then not only are you working towards the goal of aligning those 4 legs of loyalty, but you're actually framing it in that way, in your language, in the way that you approach it. So the goal is alignment, not conflict. And if you even frame your language and your approach and the way that you talk to the people in your team about it in the terms of alignment, then that helps everybody to get aligned, right? It works even that way, at that level. So let's bring that back to the examples we mentioned. So we've got the underperforming crew member. We can help them to improve so that the team performs better. With the overly casual environment, we can raise the level without killing morale. And with dealing with an incorrect decision, we can adjust our approach in service of the mission, but not in service of ego. We're not choosing sides here. We're all on the same side. We're bringing those sides into alignment, all pointing in the same direction. When loyalty pulls you in different directions, there's no need to ask, who am I backing? It's better to ask, what outcome am I creating? If you apply that consistently, the conflict doesn't disappear, right? Conflict is still going to happen from time to time, but it becomes manageable. And over time, these different forms of loyalty will, on average, less often, compete with each other and start to reinforce each other. So this gives us a usable mental model. Step 1 is notice. Step 2, evaluate. Step 3, project into the future. Step 4, execute. There's no rigid rules. We're not moralizing. We're not saying what's right or what's wrong. It's just a way to think like an officer under real conditions. Now, okay, so that's the general approach to loyalty, but it's also worth figuring out where loyalty fits into our existing ethical schema. So we have our 3 pillars of Starfleet values, which is courage, dedication, and a love of Star Trek. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, loyalty very much runs through all 3 of those pillars, which is why we tend not to talk about it as a separate or distinct idea. It's woven into every aspect of this ethical framework. So let's discuss now how it relates to each one of those 3 pillars, just so that we've got that understanding of how it anchors things together. So the first one is loyalty plus courage leads to decisive action. So that means acting when hesitation would hurt the mission. So what is courage again? Let's describe courage as a Starfleet value. Courage is the fortitude to do something important, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable, the first time, right? Overcoming anything resembling fear or anxiety to do the thing that needs to be done. When we are acting both courageously and with loyalty, we are led to take decisive action. And what does that look like? It means, well, it leads to acting decisively. When hesitation could be a problem. And I know that it's ironic that I hesitated while saying that. I'm just trying to formulate the verbiage in my head as we go. When it's clear that holding back or waiting or wasting time could hurt the mission in itself, that is when decisive and rapid action needs to take place. A lot of the time, a lot of the activities that we engage in are time sensitive, which is to say that they need to occur by a specific day or specific date, or else the window has closed. An example of something like that might be a watch party for a new Star Trek episode, right? Well, when a new episode drops, we've only got so much time to share watching that episode together as a crew before spoilers start popping up on internal Starfleet channels and on the internet. And then we've missed the window to have that fresh novel experience together where we're enjoying that episode together as a crew. So that is a time sensitive issue. And if we are spending a lot of time discussing about when and where and how we're going to do this thing, that could hurt the mission, because then before you know it, the due date has passed and now we've missed our opportunity. So courage plus loyalty to the mission in that instance looks like making a decisive call as early as is reasonably possible when and where and how we're going to host this mission, even if that means that there are details that have to be worked out after the fact. We don't necessarily have to have all the information available, but once we have enough information, we can then make a call and then adjust later if we need to. Another example of that might be, well, not an example, another instantiation of that might be taking initiative instead of waiting. So instead of just sitting down waiting for somebody else to take responsibility for something, if you'd like to see something happen in the world, it's standing up and doing it yourself, right? If you've got an idea for how things could improve, your idea, your project, take on that project. Go out in the world and do the thing. Submit the mission approval request. Chat to your direct superior about taking on some additional responsibility and executing the change that you would like to see. And that relates to the third instantiation of this, which is stepping into responsibility when needed. When it's clear that there's a gap in the hierarchy, in the chain of command, and somebody needs to be taking responsibility for a specific aspect of Dauntless operations, or within your department or your away team or in the region or in Starfleet, if you see there's a gap there and you know that you're capable of filling that gap, stepping in to fill that gap, that is what loyalty plus courage looks like. Courage is what gets you moving. Loyalty ensures that you're moving in the right direction. So courage here is about stepping forward when something needs to happen, and what this would look like in practice. I've already given you 1 or 2 practical examples, but let's look at a couple of others. So if a situation is unclear or it's drifting, you could step in and say, all right, here's what we're doing next, right? Yeah, okay. I'm not going to produce a whole new fantasy scenario about each one of these. You can do that yourself if you need to. An activity or an event is losing structure, right? Things aren't shaping up the way they're supposed to. You help to refocus it instead of letting it unravel. Something needs to be done and no one else has taken ownership. You take responsibility rather than waiting for somebody else to step up. A plan isn't working in practice. You adapt and move things forward. What this isn't is waiting for someone to tell you what to do, deferring responsibility unnecessarily, avoiding action because it might not be perfect. That's a key one. The perfect is the enemy of the good. Loyalty here is the willingness to act in service of the mission, not to wait for ideal conditions, because conditions are never going to be ideal. You act based on what you have now and adjust later as needed, but acting now is what counts, right? Let's get this started and then we'll work it out as we go along. And so even if you have what should be a perfect plan, no plan ever survives contact with the enemy. And the enemy in this case is the entropy of life. All right, next leg. Loyalty plus determination results in consistent readiness. This means showing up prepared, repeating your fundamentals properly, and staying engaged even when it's routine, especially when it's routine. So determination is, again, by way of definition, it's the fortitude to keep on showing up over and over again to do what matters, day in, day out, as it's required, right? Being reliable, being dependable, and consistent. Determination keeps you going. Loyalty keeps you doing it properly. So determination here is about being prepared and reliable over time. And what that looks like in practice is something like you arrive on time or early for missions, meetings, or events, right? You don't want to have the rest of the crew sitting waiting for you for 45 minutes. Be there on time. Another way is that you've read the brief of the mission or you understand what's happening beforehand. All of the information for any given mission or activity that we engage in should be very easy to find. And if you have any questions or uncertainty, there are plenty of people around who can answer your questions about it before you arrive. So showing up for the mission and having no clue what's happening, that's not great. That's frankly disloyal. Next is you bring what you need, your materials, your uniform, your equipment, and your mindset, your mentality. You bring those with you to the mission or just to every day at work. You don't rely on others to compensate for your lack of preparation. So you're not hoping that somebody else is going to bring the stuff that you need to the mission. You need to make sure that you've got it. And even if your preparation involves asking somebody else to bring it for you, right? So even if you don't have your own specific piece of equipment, let's say you're going to a game day with your away team and you don't have a Star Trek CCG deck. You don't own one and you don't have enough time to go and get one printed and sleeved up. Your preparation in that situation would be reaching out to somebody in the crew who you know has a few Star Trek CCG decks and asking if you can borrow one of theirs and asking if they can bring it with them to the game day mission. That's what your preparation looks like. Instead of just showing up on the day hoping that somebody has brought an extra one with them. That's requiring somebody else to compensate for your lack of preparation. Preparation is doing the work beforehand to making sure that you're ready. Over time, you will show up consistently, not just when it's convenient. And what this isn't is, it's not arriving unprepared and catching up during the activity, hoping that you'll just be able to figure it out along the way. Treating participation as optional effort. It's not. Participation is required. We need you to be engaged and active. Being inconsistent in your attendance or engagement. So loyalty here is respecting the mission, the big M mission and the small m mission, and the team by being ready to contribute from the start. Necessary caveat here, we understand that life gets in the way. Although we assume that you have loyalty for the Dauntless as your group, for your colleagues here as individuals, we know that you must also have loyalty to other aspects of your life, right? You've got a day job, you've got a family, you've got friends. these things also are aspects that of your life that require loyalty and engagement from you. And so we understand when you need to be able to split your attention between us and other parts of your life, especially when it comes to things like earning money or people's health or that kind of thing. When that happens, it's necessary to decide which aspects of your life to which you have devoted loyalty must take up more of your time and effort. And that is a perfectly legitimate approach. What we need from you, if you decide to deprioritize your engagement with the Dauntless, which again, that might be required from time to time, is to let us know that you've done that, right? Let us know that you're not going to be showing up as frequently as you normally do. Let us know that you've got this other thing going on. You don't even have to give us details about it, just letting us know that you've got something else that's going on that is going to be occupying your time and attention, so that we know, so that we're aware of it. And check in with us as often as you can to make sure that you're still engaged, right? So that we know that you're still around. Even if you're really, really busy with work or family or something, that monthly check-in once a month with your direct superior, that should be relatively straightforward. You've got time to send at least one text message a month, no matter how busy you are. Even if that's all you can manage, that's fine. Just make sure that you're keeping us in the loop on what's happening with you so that we know not to send out a search party. Right, and that is what loyalty looks like in that situation. All of these things are necessarily dynamic. The third value is loyalty plus the love of Star Trek. And that looks like active participation, which means treating missions as something that you do, not just something that you experience, not just something that happens to you, it's something that you are doing. It means engaging with the team, not just with the content. That's a bit of a subtle distinction there. Maybe worth a little bit of explanation. For example, we're watching an episode together, understanding that the rest of the people in the room are also people, they're also members of your crew, they're there for the same purpose that you are. The content is important, right? Engaging with the Star Trek matters. That's what has brought us together. But we are together now. So the team is as important, if not more important, a component of that activity than the content itself. So engaging with the team, not just the content. And very importantly, showing up consistently. The love of Star Trek is what brings us here, what brings us together. But loyalty is what turns that into a commitment. The love of Star Trek brings people in, but loyalty determines how we show up. What this looks like in practice. We actively engage in missions, discussions, and activities. We contribute to the experience. We don't just attend it. We don't just show up. We're actually making a contribution. We remain present and involved throughout, so we don't just log in and alt-tab to a different screen. During quieter or less exciting activities, we still participate fully, even if full participation is sitting quietly and listening. That's sometimes the case. And then over time, we treat this as something that we are committed to, not just something that we drop into and out of. Right? This is something that we've decided to engage with and invest in over time. What it's not is passive attendance, just kind of being on the roster, minimal engagement, just doing, as little as you can get away with, or only showing up when it suits you. And I don't just mean when it suits you as in this is literally the only time that you can show up, because again, we understand that life happens, but only showing up when you kind of feel like it, when you remember, when you've got nothing else going on and you feel like getting engaged today. Okay. Excuse me, this is Harris. He's decided to interfere. Loyalty turns shared interest into a shared effort. So let's synthesize these three. Let's bring them together briefly. So with courage plus loyalty, you step up when needed. With determination plus loyalty, you show up ready and consistently. With the love of Star Trek plus loyalty, you engage fully. Loyalty ensures you do all three in service of the mission and the crew, not based on your convenience or on your mood. Okay. Let's think a bit more about alignment. No, we've already talked about this. We don't need to talk about this now. Okay, here we go. This is better. What goes wrong? Failure modes. when it comes to loyalty and how to fix it. So loyalty doesn't usually fail in dramatic ways. It tends to fail quietly, most often before the mission even begins. The primary failure mode is not showing up. And this is a big one when it comes to a volunteer-based organization like ours. People intend to attend, but don't. They think, oh yeah, I'm gonna be there, and then they just don't pitch. People who drift in and out inconsistently, we don't know whether we should expect them or not. People who only show up when they feel like it, when it suits them. What's happening here is that loyalty is being directed towards convenience instead of towards the mission. And what this results in is that the team becomes unreliable because the individual members of that team are unreliable. It becomes difficult to make plans for the future because we don't know who we're going to have available to do the engagement. The burden then shifts from the whole crew onto the same few consistent people that are engaging reliably. And then that means that we lose momentum over time. And this is not a minor issue. This is a big deal for us. It's foundational, in fact, for the Dauntless. We can't have a functioning team if people aren't present, because essentially the team is all we have, right? Everything else we've got, the Discord server, the Instagram account, the briefings, all of that, that's just what we have. But what we are is the team. And without the team, we have nothing. The second failure mode is passive or minimal engagement, right? So this is not quite as severe, but it's still an issue, right? It involves being present but not really contributing. So these are the people who are just kind of around, but they don't participate. They treat participation as optional effort, which means then that they engage inconsistently. They'll show up sometimes, but not reliably. And what's happening here is that the loyalty is diluted. It's present in name, but it's not evident in action. And again, caveat, we know that life gets in the way. And if you're sick in bed at home and you can't leave the house, obviously you can't be present at an away mission. But it also becomes clear over time, if you are always the person who's calling in sick and not able to make it, then we know that the issue isn't that you're sick. There's something else going on, right? And what's likely going on is that the loyalty is diluted. Another failure mode there is lack of follow through. So this one's a little bit more subtle, but and as a result, it can be overlooked. So this looks like taking on a task or responsibility. So being the first one to put up your hand and saying, I'll do that, but then not actually doing the work, not completing the task that you volunteered for. It can be agreeing to help and then not showing up when the help is happening. It can be starting strong, right? Diving into a task and beginning the work and then just dropping off when it starts to get difficult. What's happening here is that the loyalty is present at the point of intention. It's not that we doubt your intentions were pure, that you had every intention of following through on that. But once it gets to the execution, then that loyalty kind of drifts away. And the key insight that relates to all of those failure modes is this. Loyalty isn't tested when you're present. It's tested when you decide to show up at all, right? So that's the real pressure point, when you make that decision to do the thing, to show up, to be present, and to engage. And here's how we resolve that. I'm not just pointing out failure modes, I'm also offering solutions. Step one, another multi-step process. First step of this process is to decide in advance. Attendance isn't a moment of decision, right? You're not deciding 5 seconds before you leave the house whether or not you're going to attend the mission. It's a prior commitment. It's something you've already decided in advance. Decide ahead of time, preferably at the moment that the mission is announced, I will be there. In fact, if it's a priority 1 mission, then you've already decided years in advance when you decided to join the Dauntless that you'll be there. But with priority 2 and down, it's when the mission is announced, that's the time to decide that I'm going to be there. And then you treat it as something that's just scheduled. It's not optional. It's in your calendar. It's happening. The loyalty starts before the mission begins. The next step is to remove friction. So because it's coming up, because it's scheduled, because you know it's happening, you can in advance remove the obstacles that make it more difficult for yourself. If people don't show up, it's often because it's easy to not show up. So what you do there is you set reminders for yourself in your phone so that you don't forget the time. You make your preparations in advance. Any gear or equipment that you need, any software you need to download, anything like that, you do that in advance. What that does is it reduces your last minute decision points. It gives you fewer opportunities to change your mind at the last minute because you're like, oh, I'm about to leave, but my uniform is not clean. Oh, I can't go. It's easy to give yourself an emotional escape hatch like that if you haven't done your preparation in advance. So do that preparation in advance. That's a way of ensuring that you're going to honor your commitment. Next step is to re-anchor the moment. And when the moment comes and you're tempted to bail at the last second, ask yourself a couple of questions. Question 1, do I feel like it? And then ignore the answer because it's irrelevant. You've already made the commitment. Second question you ask yourself, is it convenient? And then you ignore the answer because again, you've already made the commitment and the answer is irrelevant. What you can instead do is ask a different question. Does the mission benefit from me being there? And the answer is always yes. That is the correct question to be asking yourself. Does the mission benefit from me being there? Step 4, act on it consistently. So don't just do that once, do it all the time. Show up even when it's routine, show up even when you're tired, show up even when it's boring. Hopefully it's never boring, especially if you show up and you make sure that it's not boring. But even when it's not thrilling, when it's not exciting, you show up anyway. Consistency is what turns loyalty from intention into reality. And what this looks like on the day, right? In practice. Instead of deciding on the day if you're going to go or not, forget about it. You've already committed. You're already locked in. It's happening. Instead of skipping occasionally, you just show up as a matter of habit. Unless something is actually preventing you from attending, you show up. And instead of it being optional, you are reliable. That is what people will notice about you. That's what they'll think about you, and they'll think positively about you. Loyalty on the Dauntless isn't proven by how you act when you're here. It's proven by whether you show up at all. Why does it matter? Without loyalty, we just have individuals. We don't have a team. We have participation, but we don't have execution, right? We have people showing up and doing things, but we're not getting anything done. We have activity, we've got people chatting in channels and whatnot, but we don't have progress. We're not moving towards anything. We have inconsistency. People show up differently each time. Things still happen, but they don't build. We don't go anywhere. We don't have any kind of trajectory. We don't flourish. But with loyalty, the team, all of us, becomes reliable. We start to know who's going to show up and who's going to contribute. Performance becomes consistent, not perfect, but dependable, reliable. We know that things are going to happen. People and the team improve over time. The more you engage, the better you become at it. That's our philosophy of mission readiness, is becoming better at doing what we do. And then as a team, because our effort is aligned, the team gets better over time. And what we then see is that the mission, again, big mission, small mission, actually succeeds repeatedly, not by accident. Now things don't just happen, they compound, right? There's momentum, things are starting to grow. The real difference isn't just effort, isn't how hard we try, it's alignment. So a group or an individual can be talented, can be motivated, can be enthusiastic, and can still underperform if loyalty is scattered, if it's pointed in the wrong direction. But when that loyalty is aligned, and all of our loyalties are aligned in similar directions, average individuals become a strong team. Simple activities that we do every day become meaningful missions, and repetition becomes progress, something that we can build on. Loyalty is what turns a collection of people into a functioning unit, not occasionally, but consistency. So, in closing, before we move on to the Q&A section, courage gets you to act. Determination keeps you going. The love of Star Trek gives you a reason to be here. Loyalty is what ensures that all of that is applied to the mission by showing up, ready to give your best, and by helping others to do the same. Okay, questions and comments. Let's see. It's been a lively chat, and I did see a couple of things had my name tagged, so I'm pleased to scroll back to those. I'm seeing lots of cat pictures, which I also enjoy. Good, good, good. Okay. Let me just greet everybody who's here. We've got Lieutenant Lively, Commander Shimali, Lieutenant Commander Kalitz, Captain Van Krenen, and Colonel Hubert. Lots more pictures of cats. Nice, good. I like to see that. Okay, from Commander Kalitz. How does one handle the situation of forced loyalty? Knowing where you want your loyalty to be placed, but you're in a sense forced to bide your time when options are not there to move your loyalty at the moment. Okay, so it's a little cryptic, but I'm going to assume that that refers to something like a day job situation, right? When you are compelled to exhibit loyalty to somebody because they pay your bills, an employer, and you may not have any viable alternatives at the moment, so you kind of are stuck in that situation. And that is difficult, right? I can definitely understand that that's a conundrum to deal with. The way I would suggest dealing with that is by understanding who the loyalty is to, first of all, and how that benefits you, how it benefits the mission, right? Whether that's your personal mission or a different mission. Is the loyalty to your employer, or is the loyalty to yourself because working in that job provides you with a stable salary which can then pay your bills? That's an intriguing way of asking that question, I think. Then it's about asking, what is the mission that we're working towards here? Is it the mission that of the employer? Is it putting money in his pocket? Is it contributing to his business? Maybe he's providing a valuable service, and maybe that's the mission. Or is the mission keeping your bills paid, which also is an important mission. Understanding what that loyalty is then should help you to conceptualize the right place to put your emotional investment, right? To understand where your loyalty should be, and then also to help you decide what the path forward might look like. Maybe the path forward is, okay, I continue to suck it up and live in this admittedly uncomfortable situation because I am loyal to the mission or to myself or to the group or to the cause. Or maybe the next step is to do what I need to do here while simultaneously looking for a new employer elsewhere. Again, I'm not suggesting that this has to be about an employment situation. There might be other ways that this might be relevant, but let's use that as the example. It can help you to clarify your thinking if you understand who the loyalty is to exactly, whether it's to a person who doesn't deserve it or whether it's to yourself in that situation. Allowing yourself to sit in an uncomfortable situation because it actually benefits you in the medium to long term. Hopefully that answered the question. Okay, next question. From Commander Shimali. I had a very lengthy chat with a colleague about loyalty, responsibility, and obligation, specifically about environmental sustainability, where I said we have an obligation to intervene. Do you think of the three as the same or as their own distinct concepts? I think that they are distinct but overlapping: loyalty, responsibility, and obligation. Loyalty describes our commitments to a specific cause. Responsibility describes what it is that it describes one of the ways that loyalty manifests. So what it is that we are expecting ourselves to do in service of that loyalty. And obligation, I feel like, is similar to responsibility, but that expectation is coming from outside, not inside. So responsibility is a choice that you make. I am choosing to be responsible for this. whereas obligation is someone else is expecting this of me. So there's a lot of overlap in those three concepts. It's a Venn diagram with not a lot of white space around it, but I think that they are distinct but related concepts. So loyalty is your commitment, responsibility, I would frame as what you feel, what you think needs to be done from your point of view, and obligation is what other people are expecting of you to do. Yeah, that's how I would frame it. Free to disagree. Okay, another one, this one from Lieutenant Lively. Has there been a moment in your career, Starfleet or otherwise, where your understanding of loyalty changed, and what did that teach you? That's an interesting question. A couple of examples spring to mind that I wouldn't really want to talk about. Let me try and find one that I am comfortable talking about. Okay, right, let me talk about this. Brand loyalty. At one time, I was exceptionally brand loyal to Google. Google, I thought, and I still think this to a large extent, had what I believe to be a product design philosophy that most accurately aligned with my approach to productivity, getting things done, communicating with the world, living in an online space. I felt that Google products, so we're talking about Google Search, Google Maps, Gmail, Google Plus, Calendar, Reader, all of these different products, they were so well designed and they worked together and fitted together in such a cool way that it just made sense for me for the way that I like to move through the digital world. And I thought of myself as a Google brand ambassador. That perception changed when I saw Google making some decisions that I didn't understand. There were some Google tools, Google products that were a very important part of my life that they just took away. Specifically, we're talking about Google Reader, which was an personal RSS aggregator, Google Wave, which was an online collaboration tool, which was never even released, but that's a whole other story. Google Hangouts, which actually never went away, although they said it was going to go away. It's actually still exists. It's just got a different name now. And what was the fourth one that was, Google Plus, which was their sort of online social network, kind of sort of modeled on Facebook, but was vastly superior to Facebook in virtually every way, at least in my opinion. Google, for no apparent reason, canceled all of those products. And all of the functionality that I was deriving from those various different tools just went away. I was no longer able to live my life in the same way because those things that I'd invested my time and data and energy into were just gone. I had no recourse. I had no backup. There was nothing I could do about it. It just didn't exist anymore. Although this had happened before, none of the tools that had gone away before really impacted me as much as those ones did. So when that happened, I felt like the rug had been pulled out from underneath me, and I could no longer justify my sense of loyalty to Google anymore, because the reasons that had led me to be loyal to them in the first place were essentially gone. Now, that was a long time ago now, and I still rely heavily on Google tools today, but I no longer feel loyal to them in the same way that I once did. Not only am I've moved beyond a state of loyal opposition where I'm loyal to them but criticize their faults. I no longer feel loyal to them at all. And if I find another tool that does the same thing that a Google tool does but better, then I will use that other tool. I will no longer default to using Google just because it's Google, which used to be the case. So it taught me that things can change. Not everything is consistent. Just because something feels like it's worth your loyalty today doesn't mean that it will forever continue to be the case. But also that even though I no longer feel that sense of loyalty to Google and their products, I still use a lot of those products today, because it doesn't, that the fact that they betrayed me in a way, they let me down, doesn't erase the fact that some of what they do is still good. So I'm no longer, I'm not an anti-Google activist either. I'm just no longer pro-Google. I'm just pro what works best for me in my life. I was able to reformulate that loyalty as being Google focused and rather productivity focused, which I hope long term will be a more productive approach. All right, let's see if we have any others. Okay, no more from the crew at the moment, but I do have a couple from my yeoman, so let's address those. First one is, what do I do when loyalty to my family, my partner, or employer conflicts with loyalty to Starfleet? I did actually speak about this a little earlier, but let's talk about it again. This is a strong question because it gets right to the issue of competing loyalties in the real world, right? We as much as we would like to live in Starfleet full time, that's just not the reality of life, right? We've got all kinds of stuff happening in our lives, and we have to juggle those things. Starfleet or the Dauntless shouldn't require you to neglect your other responsibilities. In real life, loyalty isn't about pretending that every commitment is equal at every moment. That's just not practically how things work. It's about being honest about what you can realistically sustain and then being dependable within those limits. And from a Starfleet or a Dauntless point of view, the disloyal act is it's almost disloyal to not have other obligations, right? We wouldn't be able to sustain somebody who's devoted their every waking moment to Starfleet. Like that's not how it works here. You need to be able to pay your bills. You need to have your relationships. You need to be hitting the gym, doing all kinds of stuff other than just Starfleet. The disloyal act is overcommitting, disappearing, or allowing people to rely on you for things that you were never actually in a position to deliver. The right move is to align your commitments openly and honestly, being honest with yourself about what you can commit to and being honest with us about what you can reasonably do. And that may mean from time to time scaling back your role, scaling it back up again when you can, declining certain responsibilities that you maybe have accepted in the past because you thought you could handle them, but now you know you can't, or being clearer about your availability, making sure that everyone around you knows that, look, I can only participate 1 hour a day or whatever it might be. That's not just loyalty. That's maturity, right? Being open and clear about what it is that you can, what you can do. Next question. Can you still be loyal to a group or an organization when you disagree with its leadership or direction? And this relates to Commander Kalis's question earlier. And it matters because people that assume that loyalty to someone or something means agreement, that you agree with everything that thing or person does or says or is. And in fact, that's where loyalty can be tested the most seriously. So loyalty isn't the same thing as passive agreement with everything that happens. If you care about the mission, if you care about the person, you care about the values and the long-term health of the organization or whatever it might be that you're loyal to, disagreement can be an expression of loyalty rather than a rejection of it. That's that loyal opposition. The key question there is how your disagreement is handled. A Starfleet approach would be to stay mission focused, critique in private, praise in public. So staying constructive, not destructive, being respectful, aiming to improve rather than just complaining, earning your right to whine, stepping up and doing the work involved in fixing things. And if your disagreement is really about protecting your own ego, then that's one thing. But if it's about helping the crew function better, then that's closer to a loyal opposition than to disloyalty. Loyalty doesn't forbid criticism. It almost requires it. It forbids abandonment of responsibility. Next question. How do I know when loyalty has become self-destructive? Hopefully that's not something that you would face in a Starfleet context, but it may be in your personal life or work or volunteer services outside of Starfleet, one would hope. In fact, no, we don't hope that this happens to you ever, but if it's going to happen, please let it happen somewhere other than here. Loyalty becomes, I think, unhealthy when it stops being aligned with your purpose and starts to become a habit of self-erasure. So if you have to, if your version of loyalty means that you are constantly living in a state of resentment, of chronic overextension, of having to be silent about your real problems, or of giving up things, sacrificing things that you were never actually obliged to sacrifice, then something's gone wrong, right? Then you're too much is being asked of you, or you're asking too much of yourself in order to maintain that loyalty. And from a Starfleet point of view, loyalty is meant to strengthen the mission and the people serving it. That's what mission readiness is all about. It's about making you stronger and better. If it's consistently leaving you depleted or ineffective or bitter or something like that, then it probably is no longer loyalty in the virtuous sense. It might be, you might be instead looking at something like guilt or fear or a misplaced obligation, that external obligation placed on wearing the uniform. It is wearing, it's disguised as loyalty, right? So real loyalty has backbone, but it also has judgment, right? And not people judging you as in you exercising judgment about what you're doing. It knows the difference between service and martyrdom, sacrificing yourself unnecessarily for the cause. Okay, all right. I'm seeing no new questions, just some comments. Good, fantastic. So in that case, we are going to be able to complete this. Oh, I thought we got come in under an hour this week, but I see we have not. That's fine. At least it's not 2 hours this week. You guys can take some time off. So I'm going to leave you, excuse me, Harris, you're in the way. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Loyalty isn't about good intentions. It's about what you actually do when it costs you something. Show up, follow through, and do the job properly, even when you don't feel like it. That's the difference between being part of the team and just being around. Thank you. That is all for today. You are dismissed. Swart out.
The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes